Peace, peace, and welcome everybody. Welcome to Masterclass Mondays. My name is Tah Whitty. Make sure you're ready to take some notes because we're going to dive into some deep spaces today. It's been a very interesting, fantastic, amazing, and productive and unproductive month and a half for me. My friend DJ Dom Nice has passed, and it has been a space of awakening, a space of growth for me, a space of expansion, and a space for me to be able to use my Condor tools. And the tools that and the things that we teach here at Masterclass Mondays are things that Cole and I use every day of our lives. We really dive into the tools that we have, and I'm going to be teaching you about a tool called the Logic Ceiling today here on Masterclass Mondays, which has been extremely helpful for me in the past 3 weeks. Now, this Thursday will be 4 weeks since my friend passed. And it's been very challenging. And so, if I get into emotional spaces here on Masterclass Mondays, just breathe with me and let's move through it. My friend Dom, I've known my friend Dom for, 38 years. We met in 1985 in high school. And he passed on the 16th of, it was the 16th of January this year. And he died at 54 years old. And Dom was about 230, 240 pounds. And when he passed, he was about 80 pounds. And so a lot of things came up for me around Dom's death, a lot of things that I didn't anticipate. Now, I have seen over 1,000 people die in my career in front of me as a nurse. That's a lot of people. And I've had people in my family pass, I've had other friends pass and things, but nobody as close as Dom. And this, I thought I was prepared for as I watched Dom move through a very challenging almost 2 years with cancer diagnoses. He went from cancer of the pancreas to cancer of the liver to cancer of the lungs. And he went through 2 courses of chemo. One was an experimental situation, and there was just this rapid decline over the last 6 months of his life. And I found myself in this place where ideologically, I felt like I was prepared for whatever was to come up, and I got it. And I've been able to navigate disease, and I've been able to navigate all kinds of things. And when Dom passed, I found myself in a place where I actually did not know what to do with myself because everything started to shut down. And so I had to use my tools, and I have an amazing partner who was able to lean into our tools to support me in this space. And I'm going to get into that. So get your pad and pen and get ready with any questions that you may have, because if you have any questions, I want to answer your questions on this stuff. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to dive into what we call the logic ceiling. Share my screen real quick here. Boom. Perfect. Masterclass Mondays. Look, that's me. And yeah, Dom passed on the 18th of January. 54 years old. That is a picture of one of my greatest friends on the planet. And this man introduced me to a lot of things, including the idea around me being brainwashed, which led me down the rabbit hole of exploring the ways in which I have been deeply programmed by society, by religion, by family structures, and so on, which down the road led me to formulate the Condor approach and the things that I teach people, the things that I coach people with, and the things that I live by. So I'm grateful for Dom's presence in my life. I just want to make sure that y'all know who Dom is. He was the DJ for the hip hop group that I was in the 90s. We toured around. A record that we released, that we put together in 1993, just got released about 5 years ago on vinyl in Europe. And so he lives in infamy in everything that I do. And so I just want to honor him. Thank you for honoring him with me, y'all. Appreciate y'all. So the logic ceiling, okay? This is what we teach at the Condor approach. And I only have about a half hour to teach y'all this today. So dive into this, lean into it. If you have any questions, you could always put it in the Facebook group. You can always put it in the comments on YouTube and so on. If you have any questions on this, my invitation is to come to the Condor approach, y'all. We teach about the logic ceiling in depth, and we teach you how to apply this to your own life. Okay, it's a really fundamental way of understanding how to navigate the basics of human logic. So the question I have for you, what is logic? And if you got a minute, if you got a second, if you're in the Facebook group, pop in in the group, in the Facebook group, in the comments, or here on Zoom, what do you believe logic is? I'd love to hear from you what you believe logic is. And it's different for everybody. There's a textbook idea of what logic is, and then there's what people believe logic is. Okay. And there's something very fundamental about what logic is, and that logic is something that makes sense. That's it. It's something that makes sense. And this is something that no matter who I've spoken to on this, no matter what their definition was for it, it all came back to something that makes sense. If it's not logical, it doesn't make sense. And we can do our best to put reasons on things and to rationalize things. But if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. And when something makes sense, it's logical. Now, the logic ceiling is founded around this, okay? So, what is the logic ceiling? The logic ceiling is a way to view how people are able to make sense of things. That's it. It's a way to view how people are able to make sense of things. It's literally the upper limit of a person's logical ability. It's like a ceiling. If you're in a room, you look up, there's a ceiling, right? So there's a cap on where you can go. And so your logic ceiling changes based on where you are in your life. And I'm going to dive more into that as we move along. It appears as layers of a seal or a ceiling around a person. Okay. And so you can spell it in either way, like a ceiling above you, or ceiling like a seal around a person. It's all up to you. It's relative to where you are and how you want to do it. It sounds the same way. It's a ceiling. Okay. And so this is the graphic depiction that we use for the logic ceiling. Now, there are different layers of logic, and each one of these colors, the red, the green, the light blue, the dark blue, and then the purple, all represent different layers of logic. All right. It's somewhat like a force field or an aura around a person. Now, if you've heard of auras before, aura is an energetic space that formulates around a person, or it formulates around them. It's like an energy field. And your logic ceiling is that too. And I'm going to explain more as we move. So when a person is able to be expansive in logic, we say the logic ceiling is expansive. When a person's really able to get into all kinds of logic, their logic ceiling is expansive. And that means it's growing. You're able to get into all the layers of logic and really expand into the different ways that you can explain things and understand. When a person is unable to be expansive in their logic, we say that the logic ceiling is constricted or it's tight. Okay. And that's usually limited to the three base or primary layers of the logic ceiling. And this is going to make a lot more sense as we progress and explain. But I really want you to see this graphical depiction of the logic ceiling. Okay. It's really important for you to get the understanding of this. When the logic ceiling is tight, the access to the outer layers may be limited or completely unavailable. When a person is unable to make sense, they are probably not able to access the outer layers of the logic ceiling. And this is something we call cognitive dissonance. If you've ever heard of cognitive dissonance, pop it in the comments below. Perfect. Right? Cognitive dissonance. All right. I'm looking to the side because I have another screen with Facebook over here. Remember that logic is something that makes sense. And this is where the logic ceiling comes into play. Each layer of the logic ceiling has a different type of logic. What's going on with my slides? All right, cool. So let's talk about those layers. We have the body layer, which is the base layer. Remember, we saw the little red person, okay? That's the base layer of the logic ceiling. There's body logic, there's emotion logic, there's construct logic, there's mind and mental logic, and there's spirit logic. All of these things make sense in different ways, okay? They all make sense in different ways. Body logic is the physical layer. This is the base layer. This is what makes sense for you to be alive. Okay. It makes sense for you to be in the experience space. It makes sense for you to drive your human organism. And I'm going to stop this share for a second so you can see my face as I talk about this. The base layer, the body layer of the logic ceiling is the space that makes sense for your body to be in action in this 3D realm. Now, if I was to get a cut on my finger, delete, and we're all free from this. If I was to get a cut on my finger, I wouldn't have to say to my body, it makes sense that you send fibrinogen and fibroblastin A and all of these different things here to heal this up. So I want you to do this. The body does it because it makes sense to do it. Now, when I take a deep breath, in order to get more air, in order to get a clear thought going on, my body will do it on autopilot because it makes sense for the body to breathe. It makes sense for the body to breathe. It makes sense for the body to process sugars and to process proteins and to process all of these different things. This is body logic. And body logic is where safety resides. Okay. If the body is unsafe, it will pull down all of the other layers and it will only make sense for survival. This would be the far end of this would be the fight or flight complex in your body. And so, did you ever get into a situation where there was something dangerous happening and you tried to think about something else that was rationally logical? You couldn't do it because the body pulls you down into a tight logic ceiling and it's just body. Okay. And so this is where fight or flight resides. Okay. I'm going to run away from danger or I'm going to fight against the danger to make myself safe. So me doing the quadratic equation or doing something at school doesn't make sense. And so if your child doesn't feel safe at school, okay, if your child is feeling unsafe, if there's a bully, your child's not going to learn because their logic ceiling is tight. And so they can't expand into the outer layers of the logic ceiling to have different types of rationality. Their logic ceiling is very tight. Okay. And I want y'all to really lean into these ideas around logic and how that works. I'm going to share my screen again because we're going to go into the next layer. Okay. So that's body logic. It's what it takes for the body to survive, for the body to function, for the body to recover, for the body to feel, for the body to experience. Basic life processes. Your body does not need permission unless it has been programmed to do so. So when I was in the space after Dom passed, there were periods where people were calling me to check in on me, and I would pick up the phone and my body would start crying immediately. Immediately. My body was saying, no, we're processing something. This is not safe for us right now. We have to process the changes that are happening as a result of this death. Okay. And so everything else got shut off. I would start to cry immediately. Okay. I would start to cry. And I still get into these spaces where I just start crying. Okay. The body doesn't need my permission. And when I speak about I'm talking about my consciousness, the person who's speaking through my body. Right. So this is very important. And if this makes sense, just pop a 1 in the comments so that I know that y'all are riding with this. This is very important stuff when it comes to understanding your own logic and the logic of the people around you. So the body logic space is a space of safety, self-repair. This is where our pleasure and pain signals come from. This is where our energy management comes from, our waste management, right? Your body doesn't need permission to tell you to make urine and to make feces, right? And to tell you that you need to go to the bathroom. And if you need to go to the bathroom with a big intensity, it's going to be hard for you to focus. And so have you ever been in a meeting at a job and you had to pee and you just can't focus? You have to stop. You have to listen to your body. This is body logic. The logic ceiling will get tight when the body needs to do what it needs to do. When the body logic space is a space of procreation, right? Sexuality, digestion, functional foundational functions, protein creation so that we can make new hair, new muscles, and so on, habit formation and hormone production. This is all body stuff. This is the foundational layer of the logic ceiling. What makes sense to your body? The next layer of the logic ceiling is the emotional logic layer. This is the layer that most people don't understand. And this is what we teach about in the Condor approach a bunch is emotional logic. Okay. Emotional logic is what makes sense to alert a person of being in ease or dis-ease. That is what your emotions tell you. If you follow me on Instagram, if you follow what we've been doing on Facebook, this is something that you'll become more and more familiar with. Emotional logic is something that tells you if you're in a space of ease or dis-ease or somewhere in the middle. If you're moving towards ease or if you're moving towards dis-ease, this is what your emotions tell you. Like anger, for example. Anger is an emotion that will tell you that you are not safe. And if you're in an angry space, your organism is looking to make you safe. And so you may not be able to get out of the emotional logic into a rational mind logic space because you are not safe. And so until you can get safe, the emotion and body logic spaces will work together to get you safe. Once you're safe, you can expand out into a different level of logic. This is one of the tighter logic layers, okay? Try getting rational when you're emotional. This is something that happens all the time. I hear about it all the time. This doesn't make sense. I don't understand why this person is doing this and why they're so emotional. It doesn't make sense because they're in an emotional logic space. Now, this is what it looks like on the visual depiction. Okay. Remember, ease to dis-ease is where the emotional logic space dwells. So please write that down. That's all your emotions do. People will sit here and make up all kinds of stuff around emotions and what emotions do. I can show you how any emotion falls into the space of ease to dis-ease and how it shows you there. When you're happy, I'm happy. I'm feeling joyous. Where is it telling you you are? You're in the ease space. If you're sad, it's telling you you're in the dis-ease space. You can ride along that. That's what we call the health continuum. You can ride along that in your layer of logic of emotion. The next layer is the construct logic layer. Now, a construct is a system or a structure that is put into place so you don't have to think about it. Now, the foundation of constructs, right? The foundational, so societal constructs are our foundation in our world, and they keep us in a space of order. They keep us in a place where we can function. Now, identity would be the foundational societal construct, and this is the thing that I've been having the most challenge with over this past couple of weeks as my friend passed on is my identity has shifted because my identity as a person who had Dom in his life is now no more. I don't have Dom physically in my life. I can't pick up the phone and call Dom. Last night, the Super Bowl was happening, and I don't watch the Super Bowl, but another close friend of mine called me up and said, "Man, there's this movie called Team America World Police that we all went to see in 2004, and there's a part where somebody says something and it was a scream. We absolutely laughed at it. And he saw something about that on the Super Bowl and he wanted to call Dom, but he couldn't. So he called me, right? And we talked about it. But this is the thing is my identity with Dom is disrupted. And so I have all these different identities, which are constructs with Dom that are disrupted. And so where I could fall into the logic of my friendship, yeah, it just makes sense to pick up the phone and call Dom. It doesn't make sense anymore. And so I get pulled back into the lower layers as my body reformulates and restructures itself without the construct. And so this is where things can get really challenging for people is if they're in a space where they're raised in a religion and that religion becomes a mainstay for their entire life and then they stop believing in the religion or something shows them something different later on, they start to move away from that construct and that becomes disruptive for them because it's embedded into their body. And so this is where we can start to see discrepancies and disruptions in a person's behavior patterns because of the construct layer. Now, what makes sense to constructs, what makes sense to a person is what they've been programmed into. And I just said that, so I'm going to skip through this slide here. The next layer is the mind or mental logic layer. Now, mind logic is a space where we make rational sense. Okay, we make rational sense things. Mind logic does its best to rationalize everything, including itself and the other layers. And so it's like what I'm talking about right now, how I'm speaking to you and what we're diving into. We've been in a mind logic space the entire time I've been talking, right? For most of us. If you haven't been able to focus on this, you may be in a tighter layer. If you're not safe, if there's somebody around you who you think might not believe in this or might think this is trash, you might be in a space where you're getting pulled down into emotional or your body layer. And so you may not be able to focus. And this is a space where it requires you to have some semblance or level of safety so that you can make rational sense of what's going on around you. This is actually a luxury layer. Okay. The mind logic layer is a layer of luxury. This is where we start to expand out into a space where it's a privilege to be able to be in your mind. It's a privilege to be able to jog and have these types of safety. There are people in the world right now who are in war zones. There are people who are out in the street there are people who are in their homes being threatened by other family members who don't have the luxury and the privilege to be in the mind space having this type of interaction. So they may be in a very tight logic ceiling. So when you can get yourself into a space where you can expand into the mind logic, you can actually jog around and play with things and find different ways of seeing things, different ways of perceiving things. And so then you take that and you embed that into your construct layer as new thoughts. And so this is how the logic ceiling works. And this is how it looks with those 4 layers. Now, the fifth layer is the final layer of the logic ceiling. And this is what we call spirit logic. And this has nothing to do with religion. Okay. It has nothing to do with religion at all. This is the spirit logic layer. This is the layer that we call raw consciousness and raw imagination. This is the ultimate layer of logic ceiling. Okay. This is where we are in an imagination space. This is where Isaac Newton was sitting under the tree thinking, and then the apple fell on his head, right? This is the space where we have the ultimate amount of luxury to actually grab new information from the universe, from the cosmos, from the things around us, from sitting down and contemplating. We bring that raw imagination in. Then we put it in the mind layer, we make rational sense out of it, and then we embed that into the construct layer, and we make a construct out of it so that we don't have to think about it all the time. This is where we have things like race, religion, gender, ethnicity, nationality. So when I look at this and I pick it up and I'm like, oh, that's a phone, I have a construct of identity for this. And so I can take all of this rawness from the spirit layer and bring this in, conglomerate it, and make it make sense. Okay. And so spirit is the source of all information that the mind makes into rational logic. When you take away religion, when you take away all of that stuff, there is a source of all information, and that is consciousness. And we make that into rational logic. It's the source of all material and immaterial information. It's always there, it's all around us. You don't have to believe in a God or the universe or anything to see that there are things around us, to feel that there's something around us. And that's where we all come from. In Star Wars, they call it the Force, right? If you're a Star Wars fan. All right. Spirit logic is what makes sense to simply be existing, right? It makes sense to exist simply by existing. Things simply are. Okay. And we sometimes we get into the mind logic space and we try to make sense of the spirit logic space. And if something floats through the room, through the wall, and sits down next to you, it's like, oh my gosh, let me make scientific sense of this. That's the mind space trying to make sense of something that just doesn't make that kind of sense. It just exists. Okay, there are plenty of things that just exist, and human beings love to take things and rationalize and put it into a rational format and make rational sense of it. And that doesn't always work when it comes to spirit logic. And so when you look at the logic ceiling, this is our visual representation of it. And this is what we can use to see where a person is in their logic space. So I'm sure you can see this little arrow thing that I have. If a person is not safe, chances are they're in the body logic space. If they're in, if they are safe or are safe, but they feel uneasy or or diseasy, chances are they're in an emotional logic space. And so trying to get them to make mind rational logic out of things when they're in an emotional space is not going to work. A person needs to be actually really physically safe, emotionally safe, and their constructs also have to be safe in order for them to get into this space. Now, constructs, this layer here, is the most important layer, and it's the layer that we reside in most of the time. This is the I am layer. This is the you are layer. This is the you're a Christian, you're a Jew, you're a black person, a white person, you're an American. This is where your righteous spaces live. All of these things live here. And so if something makes sense to the to this layer, trying to get out here can be a challenge. So if a person leaks out into the mind layer when they're sleeping, and they're like, man, that doesn't make sense in my religion, and they start to question the religion can also pull them down into the emotional layer and the body layer to make them feel unsafe. And this is where we have the cognitive dissonance space. If something makes rational sense, but the constructs won't let you lean into it, it can put us in a place where we become argumentative with ourselves and we become argumentative with the people around us. That can become a space of heavy challenge for all people, for all situations. This is a very important space to consider. Now, let's take an example. I'm going to stop my screen share for a second. Let's make an example. Let's say you're in a grocery store. You're in a grocery store and you're on the line, and somebody comes in and they're having a fit and they're yelling and they're screaming, and people are looking at this person and they're telling them, "Sir, calm down. This, oh no, calm down. Everything is fine, sir. Everything is fine. Stop yelling. This, no, you're scaring the kids over here. You're scaring these people. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm going to," all of these words that they're throwing at the person who is yelling and screaming, they probably can't hear it. Now, I've been in situations like this where I'm in a supermarket, or I'm in a retail store or something, and somebody starts yelling and people are trying to calm them down in that fashion. What I'll say is, that makes total sense to me. That doesn't sound very safe. No, I'm not safe. What do we need to get you safe? What do we need for you to be safe? I just need to pay for my stuff and get out of here. Okay, cool. I'm down for that. Everybody on the line, are you down to let this person go first so that they can get out? Everybody says, yeah. The person starts to de escalate and their logic ceiling starts to expand. Okay. Because they're not safe, you can rationalize until the cows come home. It doesn't make any difference. Okay. If the cops have a person, okay, if the cops have a person and they're roughing this person up, their logic ceiling shrinks to body, and they're telling the person stop moving, and the body is looking to get away from an unsafe situation, the body's going to keep moving. And this is why people die at the hands of the police, because the police are not trained to handle different layers of logic. They're only trained to subdue. Okay. And so if a person's logic ceiling is tight and their body is afraid and it goes into fight or flight, they are going to get into a space where their body is going to do things outside of a logic space, outside of a rational logic space. So explaining to somebody that this is bad behavior isn't going to change anything. Their logic ceiling is tight. Okay. And so in order for a person to expand, the first thing that a person needs is safety. Safety. We talk about this at the Condor approach all the time. Safety. If a person is not safe, their logic ceiling is going to be tight, and they're not going to be able to get into the mind space to make sense of anything. Okay. If their logic ceiling is tight and they can get beyond the body into the emotional layer, they're still not going to be able to get out here because they're not safe. If a person is in a construct space and you're calling their religion stupid, or you're telling them that something is stupid about them or their identity, their construct's not going to be safe. It's going to pull them down into emotion, pull them down into body. They're not going to be able to have a rational conversation. People have to be safe in order to have their logic ceiling expand. This is why when we get into a dream state, we are in this space where we go out into the ethers and we collect all this information from the cosmos, right? From the dreamscape, because of the space that we get into around the expanded logic ceiling. If this is making sense, if this rocks, hit me in the comments. I don't know what's going on with my Facebook thing here. I'm trying to see the comments, but it's not working. All right. All right, there we go. Cool. All right. Pop a one if this is making sense and if this is landing. And I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to continue talking about these layers. We're almost done. And then I'm going to answer some questions. All right. I'm looking. Do beliefs live both in the mind and the construct layers? Yes, Dice. I'm going to answer that in a minute. Oh, these are great questions. Okay, cool. Yay. I'm so glad. Awesome. Wonderful. Cool. The nervous system and its role in the logic ceiling. Now, when a nervous system, we all have nervous systems, and when a nervous system becomes afraid, which would be a sympathetic space, right? These orange charges that are going in, this would be the sympathetic nervous system charge. when we are in a space where we are highly charged and active, it's harder to get into the outer layers, and the logic ceiling tends to tighten up. If you're in a boxing ring, right, and somebody's coming at you and looking to punch and swing at you, your ability to do rational logic things, unless you've been really trained how to box, is going to be challenging. And so the blue circle here, the blue layer would be where your boxing training goes, right? That's a construct. And that construct of being a boxer gets embedded into that space, and you're able to operate highly in that space. And so you, as a boxer who's been trained for years, might be able to dabble in the outer layers because you've been trained. But a person who's not trained in boxing is going to shrink down into the green layer and into the red layer to get protective. And so that's where the nervous system draws a person's logic ceiling in. Okay. This is where the human nervous system comes into play with the logic ceiling. Now, when the nervous system is relaxed and we get into what we call a parasympathetic state, this would be the rest and digest space. The logic ceiling will expand. And this is where we get all the amazing information, the new information, and the things that we can learn and grow into when we expand in that space. So that's what the nervous system has to do with the logic ceiling. And again, we do dive into this deeper at the Condor approach. And I want to invite you to come to the Condor approach, y'all. The Condor approach is not just about uh, it's not just about psychedelic informed coaching. It's about coaching yourself in life and learning these tools. And we still have space for the February 20th, February 22nd to the 24th. The cart closes tomorrow night. So if you want to get in on it, please feel free to come, y'all. You can be there in person in Austin, Texas, and you can join us virtually. There is a virtual option where you can join us from anywhere in the world. We do have people joining us. So come, get your logic ceiling to expand and learn about this stuff. All right. So all right, we did that already. All right. So the more a person has access to the outer layers of the logic ceiling, the more creative, collaborative, and inclusive they can be for themselves and for the people around them. Really important, y'all. This is where collaboration happens. And if you're speaking to somebody, so any argument can be solved with the logic ceiling. And I'll tell you about that in a second. So being aware of what layer of the logic ceiling people are operating in provides an opportunity for connection. And being aware of what layer of the logic ceiling you are operating from allows you to set functional boundaries. If you are in a space where you cannot speak clearly to somebody, you could be like, look, man, my ceiling is tight. Right now is not the time. I need to get into a space where I'm safe and I can expand. I'm overwhelmed. There's a lot of information coming in. I need the space. And for another person to understand what the logic ceiling is doing and how the logic ceiling works, it gives them a space to give you space to breathe. It gives them the knowledge to give them the space to breathe. So using the logic ceiling can be a source of empowerment for you and for those you interact with. Observing the logic ceiling is highly effective in any type of relationship or any type of interaction. Okay. So when you're arguing, I'm going to stop this share again. Okay. So when you're in an argument with somebody and you're arguing, and they're arguing, you're probably arguing from a construct space, a space of belief. I believe this so much that I'm going to tell you what's right, and I'm going to keep telling you what's right, and I'm going to keep arguing this, and you're going to keep arguing it with me because you have your own construct. And so you're stuck in a construct layer, you're stuck in the three lower layers. The construct is driving, the emotion is driving your body. And so you have two people arguing from this space. There's no space, there's no room for you to expand and consider different things. And so it takes one person to stop and breathe into it and say, hey, you know what? I'm feeling like maybe both of us, our ideas are not safe. Our ideas are not safe. Yeah, our ideas are not safe. What do we do? I don't know. Let's expand. I want your ideas to be welcome here. I want your ideas to be welcome here. Okay, let's start to listen to one another. And then we expand into a different space where we can actually lean into that. There are so many people having arguments over and over again in fighting, right? Fighting with a spouse or fighting with somebody. It's because we don't have mutual context. Oh my gosh, what does that look like? Integration. Okay. When we have mutual context, we have integration. And so our constructs start to overlap. our mind spaces start to overlap and we start to have a space of play that expands us in a way that we can connect. And when I was going through what I was going through after Dom passed, I was unable to connect with people in these spaces because I was being disrupted. I was like all of my identities were being torn apart and pulled apart. And so I had to actually settle with myself before I could actually lean into having rational conversations with people because it wasn't making sense. And so I had to be able to make sense with myself. And this is where me having support of Cole and Cole being like, "Hey, just checking in. Where are you? Are you able to process this information?" I sat down and tried to work several times, and Cole actually moved my computer out of the way. And she was like, "No, Tah, you're not able to function. Your logic ceiling is tight." And she had to remind me, "Your logic ceiling's tight, Tah. You're perfect where you are. I got the business. I got this stuff. Do what you're doing to process this." This is a space where I was allowed to be in my space, get into a position where I felt safe enough to move and to act. My body was changing into something new, and I got to expand into a different space. This is where understanding how the logic ceiling works can help you out dramatically. All right, our beliefs and our beliefs in the construct layer or the mind layer. Beliefs are constructs. Okay, when we consider constructs, beliefs, when I believe I am something, it is a construct. I believe that this is a writing instrument. That's a construct. It's an identity construct. I believe that this is a pen. This can also be a fulcrum, right? It can be a fulcrum. It can be all kinds of things, right? It can be a weapon. It can be all kinds of things. It depends on what I believe. Okay. And I can make up beliefs in an instant. This is when human beings are really great at making meaning and making beliefs. But beliefs are in the construct layer, but they're made in the mind layer. Okay. They're made in the mind layer. And so I can pick this up and be like, "Oh, that's a pen." And then I can shoot a laser beam out of it. "Oh, shoot, I didn't know that." And now I have a new belief around it that I've just made. I've taken from the mind layer, put it into the construct layer and embedded it into my system. And as long as that construct has value, it's going to stay in my system. When it's devalued or it's not relative anymore, there becomes a dissonant space in the body. So let me know if that makes sense to you, Dice. Thank you for that question. It definitely does. Can you give some ideas of how you can create safety to move into the spirit or the mind layer? That's Brunel. Yes, I can give you examples of how you can create safety. So, first of all, understanding what safety is. Safety for us at the Condor approach is freedom from hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain. We need to write that down. Okay. Hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain. We call those the seven attributes of violence. I'll say it one more time: hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain. Now, the ideas of how to create safety is how to create safety for an expansion is what would get me into a space where I'm free from those things. So, like when I was in the mall with this person yelling and screaming, I can't make that person feel safe. I can invite them into a position where they can make themselves feel safe. "Man, that sounds like you feel unsafe." "Yeah, it is." "What would you need to feel safe?" I need to get out of here. I need to pay for my stuff and leave. That's that person's idea. They're keeping themselves safe, but they may not be able to access that. So by me sitting in a space, acknowledging them, right? So I've acknowledged this person's reality. And so if that person was not feeling acknowledged in the first place, their identity is probably threatened. Okay. And so what I do is I acknowledge the identity. That sounds challenging. It sounds like you may feel unsafe. I am unsafe. Cool. What do you need to be safe? Not what do I need to do for you? What do you need to be safe? I need to get out of here. Okay, cool. Let me support this environment being safe. Is everybody here down to let this person check out first? Yes, cool. Go right ahead, sir, and check out. And that person, we create an environment where the person can create safety for themselves. I can't create safety for you or anybody else. I can create an environment where you can keep yourself safe. Okay. And so it's not like I'm protecting you from a lion that's coming to get you. I'm teaching you how to keep yourself safe. Okay. It's a different story. Let me know if that helps. Master Sutherland, let me know. It's a better pen. I love you, Paul Mark, so much. All right, cool. I'm just scanning through here. Yes, the logic ceiling is wonderful. Looking for more. Okay. Yay. So this has been helpful. Wonderful, y'all. I'm so grateful that this has been helpful for y'all. I'm going to jump into the I'm going to jump inside the Zoom group and do the Q&A there. And any other questions? Okay, wait. Cora says, I'm trying to imagine this applied to grief. Okay. Let me know, Cora, if the examples that I made were helpful in applying this to grief. So when it comes to grief, okay, and I'm going to be doing a whole lot of stuff around grief. Grief is a process that comes about from disconnection. It is what we call a matrix emotion. And a matrix emotion is emotion and an emotion that comprises of or consists of a whole bunch of other emotions. So grief has anger, it has frustration, it has disappointment, it has loss, it has all of these different things inside of it. So grief is a very complex situation that comes from disconnection. So when my friend passed on, there's a disconnection space. And so I am grieving that as I change into the new person that does not have that anymore. If I had a bunch of money in the bank and somebody came and stole all my crypto and I'm free from this, right? I don't have crypto anyway, right? Not much anyway. And somebody came and they stole all my crypto, I'm disconnected from the crypto. And so I have to grieve it. What's the new person that comes out of this situation? As I'm creating this new person, the old person, I have to dismantle all of those connections that I had. And in the dismantling of all those connections, the logic ceiling gets tight because I have to unhook all of these things that used to make sense. They don't make sense anymore because what is gone, what was there is now disconnected. And so with my friend Dom, my friendship has been disconnected. I can't speak to him. The Tah that could speak to Dom, that can pick up the phone in an instant, has been disconnected. My ideas around so I also have the projection of future things with Dom, right? I had these projections that we would be these old dudes sitting on a porch somewhere together talking shit about our young years. That I have to be I'm now disconnected from that identity. And so I am grieving that. And as I grieving is a process of disconnection and changing into the new you. May not like it, okay? But you're going to grieve anyway. And so the more you fight with grief, the longer you stay in grief. Got to let go. And so this is part of the process. So let me know, Cora, if that has been helpful. I'm going to be doing a bunch more on social media about grieving and talking about these things and so on. So thank you all so very much. This has been wonderful. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you being here at Masterclass Mondays with me, with Cole, with all of us. I hope to see you at the Condor approach, right? Next week, next Tuesday. I'm so excited about the next Condor approach. It's something that's lighting up my soul. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to share my screen one more time so you can see the date again. It's February 22nd to the 24th in Austin, Texas. We will be here. Me and Cole, Dice, and Paul Mark, we will all be here with you and for you, diving into this space. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I will see y'all for the Q&A inside the Zoom room. Be easy and be free. The Condor approach is a methodology. This is not a law space, not a religion, not a cult. This is not a space of indoctrination. It is a methodology. And we use the methodology of the Condor approach to integrate things in our lives. It's a tool belt. You have all of these tools that you use on a day-to-day basis, and we move through a psychedelic informed lens because it works. And there are a lot of people that are leaning into utilizing psychedelics and they're not integrating with intention. Integration is something that's not optional, but it's something that's ongoing all the time. And if we don't do it with intention, we get what we get. So the question is, can you coach yourself and can you be coached by somebody else? From our vantage point at the Condor approach, coaching is eliciting greatness from another person. It is supporting another person and bringing out the greatness in them. And so if you can coach somebody else, can you coach yourself? Bring the greatness out of you. Be coachable and have fun. If you fall out of having fun, things can get really, really challenging. So bring yourself back to fun at every instance that you possibly can, y'all.